Investors are cheering on Microsoft after the tech giant saw reacceleration in its Azure cloud business after 2 years and capitalized on a cutback in operating expenses, showing a 27% surge in net income. Now, Microsoft CFO Amy Hood telling investors, quote, looking on a competitive basis, we feel good about our execution, we feel good about taking share, and we feel good about consistent trends. Let's bring in Rishi Jaluria, RBC Capital Markets software equity analyst, joining us now for more. Rishi, it's good to see you. So Amy Hood feels good about these results. What do you think these results tell us just about where Microsoft is positioned amongst its rivals?
Yeah, and really great to be here. Look, I think the numbers absolutely speak for themselves, and we can talk a little bit about the AI strategy. But what I think this is really telling us is Microsoft is in a league of its own when it comes to enterprise software, when it comes to tech. And part of that, I think, just goes back to the pace of innovation and the rate at which they've been able to integrate and infuse AI throughout their entire product suite, I think is surprising all of us. And that's starting to show up in the numbers, where we're seeing this faster than expected ramp and adoption of AI revenue. And really, ultimately, I think that goes back to a big bet that Microsoft made on AI, and very specifically on OpenAI going back to 2019. So I do think this bodes well for the rest of tech earnings season and software earnings season. But again, I do think Microsoft is very much in a league of their own.
And so with that in mind, is it clear, relative to the other competition that's spending or has yet to disclose how much they're spending on these AI investments, where Microsoft, even as they're leading the pack, where they can start to perhaps taper the amount of spending that they're doing on those investments and now kind of wait for that return to start to set in?
Yeah, I think that's what's really impressive is, Microsoft is investing very aggressively for Gen AI. I don't think anyone will look at Microsoft and say, they're being stingy with their investments or they're not innovating fast enough. What I think is great is Microsoft is offsetting a lot of that investment in CapEx with operational discipline in other areas of the business. By the way, I also wouldn't be surprised if to some extent they're already leveraging generative AI internally, right? Thinking about using things like GitHub Copilot within their R&D staff, and using AI within sales and marketing to be more efficient. And that's starting to help them. And you think about layering in all this AI stuff as well as Activision, and they're still talking about flat operating margins. I think that shows that they're pairing this with discipline.
Rishi, when you take a look at these results, what this means for Microsoft in the bigger picture, right? Because lots of questions just about the software business, whether or not we have seen a full turnaround within that industry. What do you think these results tell us about where maybe the broader industry stands?
I think it's showing us relative stabilization. We're not quite on that path to core cloud reaccelerating. And, I think if we think about the Azure line, we almost have to bifurcate it into two buckets, which is Azure XAI and then AI. So it still could take a few quarters before we see a reacceleration in Azure XAI growth. But AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for Microsoft right now. So I think what this shows us is there are pockets and signs of relative stabilization, which is a welcome sign in, I think, this choppy macro environment.
Rishi, you mentioned the fact that AI doing a lot of the heavy lifting right now. How much do you see it adding to the top and bottom lines here over the next maybe 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, recall Amy had talked about AI becoming the fastest business for Microsoft to reach $10 billion in revenue. And when we look at our model and think about all the different areas AI is adding to, that number seems really achievable, if not actually conservative, if we're taking a 5-year approach, because there's a lot, I think, of new TAM that gets opened up when you start to layer in AI. So it is going to be massively additive. I mean, Office Copilot on its own, we think can be a multi-billion-dollar opportunity just by reaching a 2 to 3% attach rate of Office 365 commercial users. Like, that gives you a sense for the kind of scale that they can get to. In terms of what this does to the bottom line, I think that's a trickier question. As we know right now, generative AI is prohibitively expensive, and a lot of these Gen AI products are being priced to be competitive with cloud services and not necessarily priced for, I think, the value that they're delivering. That will change over time. But as it stands right now, it is going to be a drag on gross margins. It is going to be a drag on operating margins. I believe, by my estimates, GitHub Copilot is actually losing money on a per customer basis. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the same out of Office, but over time, this should all be accretive to EPS, which is ultimately what matters for the stock price.
Rishi, my final question to you is simple. How would you describe the year that Microsoft is having? $10 billion investment in OpenAI and really kind of thrusting them into the pillar of a AI conversation that's taking place alongside NVIDIA, of course, too. And then additionally, finally, the closure of this Activision Blizzard deal. How would you describe the year that Microsoft is having and what investors should be watching for next?
Honestly, it's an unparalleled year for Microsoft. Who would have thought if we were having this conversation a year ago, and I were to tell you, hey, Microsoft is the leader in big tech AI, not Google, you probably would have laughed at me and told me to get off your show. But here we sit today where Microsoft is in that position, right? And it goes back to this very strategic investment they made in OpenAI going back 4 years, but also having the kind of forward path to integrating AI throughout the suite, having this federated AI approach. It is honestly an unparalleled year for Microsoft. And I think it really speaks to what Satya Nadella has brought to Microsoft in terms of innovation in their DNA, which none of us could have seen coming when he first took over the position.
Rishi Jaluria, who is the RBC Capital Markets software equity analyst. Rishi, great to begin the day with you here, and appreciate the analysis coming off of these results.
Thank you.